That night, my husband made a crazy suggestion that I never would have thought to consider, much less accept. To my astonishment, I found myself unable to resist the urge to have personal relations with 3 other men. The night transpired in ways that none of us anticipated, and you won't believe what happened next. It all began one hot summer evening after I had returned home from work, worn out from the demands of the day, to discover my husband, Marcus, lounging in the living room with a glass of whiskey. I got a chill from the intensity with which his eyes met mine. Tonight, there was a new energy that crackled in the air, a different side to him. I could feel his eyes lingering on me as I sat next to him, observing everything I did. "How was your job?" His voice was extraordinarily quiet, almost sensual, when he inquired. I sighed in exhaustion and shrugged. Just long and exhausting as usual. Marcus, however, wasn't paying any attention. Rather, he touched my thigh tenderly, and I felt a surge of warmth as a result. I had been used to his love. The heated energy that made my heart race, however, was different tonight. My pulse accelerated as I turned to face him as his fingers moved gently up my calf. There was a hunger in his eyes, a need that was both thrilling and unsettling. He leaned closer and said, "I've been thinking about us," in a voice that was hardly audible. "About our necessities." I was shaken by what he said, and I moved about in my chair, not sure where this was going. "What are you saying?" My voice trembled a little as I asked. Marcus grinned as he raised his hand and pressed his warm breath to my ear. He muttered, "I think we need something different, Isabella. Something to make our relationship more interesting." A knot started to grow in my stomach as I swallowed hard. "Add some spice." With my mind racing to catch up, I repeated. He nodded, and I felt a chill go down my back as his lips touched my neck. His words exploded like a bombshell in the silent room as he said, "I want to see you with other men." I was stunned for a second by the outrageousness of his offer, my head spinning. I withdrew, looking for any hint of doubt or remorse on his face. But all I discovered was unadulterated desire. "Are you interested in seeing me with other men?" My voice was no more than a whisper as I echoed. Marcus nodded, lust dark in his eyes. "Indeed." He took a breath. "Not just any men, though. I would like you to be with 3 attractive, powerful black males. In their arms, I want to watch you lose yourself, feel their touch, and go through something wild and fresh." My thoughts were racing. Such a situation had never occurred to me, and I never would have thought Marcus would even explore the possibility of sharing me with anybody else. However, as I gazed into his eyes, I noticed the pleasure of the forbidden, the exhilaration there. A part of me was intrigued, which was odd. My curiosity was piqued, and I felt compelled to venture into the unknown realm of my own sensuality. I shifted uneasily as a wave of heat swept over me, my body betraying me. "Hey, I'm not sure, Marcus." Uncertain of how to react, I stumbled. He softly squeezed my hand as he reached for it. He said in a calming voice, "I know it sounds crazy, Isabella, but I assure you it'll be amazing. You'll adore it. And I'll be there, observing and appreciating you. There is no reason for fear." As his words swept over me, I started to think about the impossibility. Am I capable of doing this? Was it possible for me to be with 3 different men while my husband looked on? The concept was banned and taboo. However, it stoked a need in me for something fresh, something adventurous, something that would challenge the limits of my meticulously planned life. "All right," I said in a barely audible whisper, but it reverberated in the room's tense hush. I was taken aback by how easily I gave myself over to the unknown. Marcus's eyes glowed with anticipation as he leaned in to plant a sweet, gentle kiss on my lips. His voice was thick with eagerness as he assured Isabella that she would not regret this. Emotions were running high in the days before Marcus's scheduled night. Nervousness and excitement fought each other. Fear fought against expectation. My stomach churned with a mix of want and worry every time I considered what was ahead. I made an effort to stick to my regular schedule, but the suspense persisted, a steady hum beneath the surface of my existence, taunting me with the potential. The night finally came. Marcus had carefully planned every aspect of the arrangement. The men he had selected were already at the hotel, waiting for us. Their presence made me feel more anxious, but I got a rush when I saw all three of them standing there with smoldering eyes and confident smiles. They had broad shoulders, glossy ebony skin, and were tall. They all had a strong, masculine air, and their hungry eyes made my breath stop in my throat as they undressed me. I felt incredibly empowered but also exposed and vulnerable. Marcus was standing next to me, helping me go forward by placing his hand on the small of my back. With enthusiasm in his voice, he murmured in my ear, "Don't be shy, Isabella. I hope you enjoy this, it's for you." With my heart racing, I looked up at him and saw the unadulterated passion in his eyes. Even though I was anxious, I couldn't help but feel excited since he wanted to see me with these men after all. I stepped forward slowly, my body shaking with excitement. The men's eyes were black with need as they watched me, and as I drew nearer, the tension in the room increased until it was practically tangible. I was poised on the edge of something exciting and novel, and I was prepared to jump in. With a surge of electricity running through my body, the first man reached out and touched my arm. As his fingers moved up my arm, leaving a trail of goosebumps in their wake, I found myself leaning into him and gasping for air. His touch was firm but soft. I saw a reflection of my own longing in the depths of his eyes when they met mine. His warm, gentle lips were on mine before I even realized it. He drew me in, and the kiss began softly before getting deeper and more forceful. I felt the heat emanating from his body, his muscles flexing beneath my hands as I explored the lines of his chest, and my heart pounding as I melted into him and was held close by his powerful arms. Marcus was observing me from behind, his eyes piercing my flesh. I caught his eye as I looked over my shoulder, and the expression on his face made me feel excited. This was what he desired. He desired to witness me in this state, engrossed in another man's hug. The second man moved closer and pressed his body against mine from behind, his hand slipping around my waist. The heat of his breath was palpable on my neck. He muttered beautiful nothings in my ear while his lips brushed over my flesh. My mind was racing with the intensity of it all, and my body was shaking with want. This overwhelming feeling of being wanted by not one, but three guys was something I had never experienced before. I could feel myself giving in to the situation, and it was exhilarating. My body reacts to each kiss and touch they give me. My thoughts were obscured by want, but Marcus' voice cut through. His voice was full with emotion as he muttered, "You're gorgeous, Isabella. I adore you in this state." His remarks gave me a boost of self-assurance, and I returned my focus to the men in front of me. Their bodies surrounded me, encasing me in a cocoon of warmth and desire as their touches grew more intense. I was floating in a universe where inhibitions waned and boundaries were hazy, lost in a sea of sensations. I was unaware of how much I wanted this kind of attention, this unadulterated, unrefined hunger. As their hands moved over my body, each touch sending a wave of sensation through me, I found myself breathing more quickly. Being the focus of their attention and the object of their shared desire gave them a peculiar sense of empowerment. By placing his hand on the small of my back, the man in front of me drew me in until our bodies were flush. Every part of him was firm and ready, and I could feel the heat of his breath. His hands grasped my hips as though he couldn't get enough, and I could sense the intensity in his touch. The second man's hand moved up my sides behind me, following the contour of my waist with its fingers before reaching up and grasping my breasts through the flimsy material of my dress. I gasped as his thumbs brushed over my nipples, and his hard, dominating touch sent a shock of ecstasy right to my heart. I could sense the tension building within of me, a knot of longing that grew tighter by the moment. Marcus remained there, observing the events. Even though I could feel myself sinking into the moment's enticing pull, his presence served as a constant anchor. I could see the unadulterated hunger in his eyes as they were fixed on mine. He seemed to be having as much fun as I was. He was more than simply a bystander. He played a crucial role in the fascinating bond that developed between these men and me. The third man went closer and said, "You're so beautiful, Isabella," in a smooth, low voice. His fingers moved slowly and purposefully down my arm. "I've been eager to caress you and experience the softness of your skin." His words made me shudder, and my body reacted to his touch automatically. His arms encircled my waist from behind, and I leaned back into him. How they handled me, how they caressed me. I felt as though they had fully taken possession of me, and I was allowing myself to be overcome by the tremendous intensity of the experience. As they freely moved their hands over my body, every inch of my flesh was alive and tingling with delight. The guy behind me bit my neck tenderly, his fangs brushing against my delicate flesh while his hands glided down, passing over my hips and landing on my thighs. His fingertips teased the naked flesh of my legs beneath the hem of my dress, and I gasped. The pain of desire was now nearly intolerable, and I could feel the heat building up between my thighs. "Isabella, do you enjoy this?" With a dark, sensual touch, the man in front of me whispered against my flesh. "Tell us how it feels." The weight of my own need made my voice tremble as I muttered, "I love it. This is unlike anything I've ever experienced." Indeed, I had never encountered anything like this before. I was unaware that I was lacking a certain rawness and energy. It felt like they were releasing something wild and primordial from deep within me based on the way they touched and affected me. He pulled me in for another kiss while grinning and running his hand up my back to tangle in my hair. It was slower and more purposeful this time, and his lips moved against mine with a playful tenderness that stood in stark contrast to the tension I was experiencing within. I murmured softly into his mouth, lost in the feeling as his free hand cupped my face and his thumb stroked my cheek as he intensified the kiss. The second man's fingers were still caressing my thighs behind me, getting closer to the spot where I yearned for him but never quite satisfying my craving. He teased me, prolonging the moment and increasing the strain until it was nearly intolerable, causing my breath to come out in ragged gasps. I said, "Please," with a deep longing that even startled me but was hardly audible. The third man, who had not spoken yet, moved forward and kissed my neck's delicate flesh. His teeth brushed my skin as he nibbled and licked, sending thrills of ecstasy down my spine. He confidently ran his hands over my body, leaving a trail of shivers behind them. My body was reacting to every touch and every word they murmured, and I was engulfed in a tornado of feelings. The combination of their attention was euphoric, and I savored in the sensation of being wanted so strongly. Marcus's eyes were fixed on mine, reflecting my longing, and his presence was a continual source of comfort. His excitement fueled mine, and he was having as much fun as I was. With each second that went by, the tension inside of me tightened and tightened, the expectation growing. I was about to give up, to let go and let myself be engulfed by the unadulterated, primordial ecstasy that throbbed in my veins. "Don't stop, please." With a frantic appeal I pleaded. The man kissed my shoulder tenderly and laughed, his breath warm across my flesh. He said, "We're not going to stop, Isabella," with a low growl that made me tremble. "We have only just begun." The anticipation became nearly intolerable as the knot of longing inside me intensified. My body shuddered, torn between the exquisite agony of waiting and the overwhelming yearning for release. The man in front of me kissed me one more time, and as he withdrew, his dark eyes met mine. "You're amazing," he whispered, his voice full of praise. "I'm eager to see how you're feeling." With a quick, rehearsed motion, he removed my dress's straps from my shoulders, causing the fabric to gather at my feet like a dashed hope. I felt strangely empowered, yet exposed and vulnerable. I felt lovely, desirable, and alive as I looked into their eyes, which were full with unrestrained want. Marcus's eyes were full with pride and want, and they blazed into me. I was pushed more into the unknown realm of my sensuality by his acceptance, which intensified my own need. The second man moved in closer, leading me to the bed with his hands on my waist. His voice was a soft order, Lie down, Isabella. You're going to feel fantastic thanks to us. I complied, sinking onto the plush mattress with my heart racing with eagerness. My body throbbed with a longing that was almost painful. They were all about me, their mouths and hands in a symphony of pleasure and touch. Their combined attention was so overwhelming that it made my brain spin and my body hurt from a frantic want. With his body pressed against mine and his fingers tangled in my hair, one of them gave me a passionate kiss. While the third man's hands danced over my legs, their touch a slow, agonizing investigation. Another traced kisses down my neck and chest. My body was reacting to every touch, and I was engrossed in the symphony of feelings. I didn't want it to stop. Marcus spoke softly but passionately, his voice piercing the mist of ecstasy. "You're amazing, Isabella," he muttered. "I adore you in this state." The event was made even more exciting by his acceptance and desire. Knowing that he was watching and savoring every second made my desire to satisfy him and give him what he desired even more intense. My companion leaned in to give me another kiss, his lips warm and gentle on mine. His voice was full of longing as he whispered, "You're so beautiful," in between lips. "I wish to improve your condition even further." And they drove me over the edge, plunging me into a realm of unadulterated joy. Just when I felt like I could take no more, that the pleasure had peaked. My breath caught, my body shook, and I lost myself entirely in the overwhelming sensations, engulfed in a whirlpool of absolute bliss. More than I could have ever imagined, more than I had ever expected. I lay there exhausted and breathless as the intensity faded, surrounded by the warmth of the three men who had shown to me a world of joy I had never known existed. As we all descended from the peaks of passion, their touches became softer and more tender. I had a great sense of contentment that reverberated in the silent aftermath, even though my mind was reeling. It was more than just the pleasure of the body. It was the emotional bond, the sensation of being so totally wanted, and the knowledge that Marcus had experienced this too, that he had wanted this for me just as much as I had. When I looked at him, the pride and love in his eyes gave me all the reassurance I needed. He leaned in to give me a gentle kiss while his hand went closer, touching my face. "You were incredible, Isabella," he said in a heartfelt whisper. "You were more than I could have ever imagined, even though I knew this would be unforgettable." I felt a great sense of love and thankfulness after hearing his comments. I became aware that this experience had gone beyond simple dream as I lay there surrounded by these men and the man I loved. Knowing that I was loved and beloved meant that I had to trust and fully surrender. Together we had taken a risk, and it had only made our relationship stronger.